Welcome to the Festive Tech Calendar session. My name is Matthias Gessenay. I'm working at Corporate Software. We are a Swiss-based company specialized in Power Platform, Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agent, Power whatever, Power Pages, everything. I'm also a Microsoft Azure MVP, so I do a lot of community work. I really appreciate that you joined my session today. And we will deploy an Azure Kubernetes service in Azure, and then we will deploy a very nice Christmas container on that Kubernetes cluster. So let's go ahead and start directly. So this is a Festive Tech Calendar session 22. And I will switch to Azure. I have already created a resource group. I have prepared a Kubernetes cluster. Let's go with that. I don't really need anything more. You see, I selected the development option, which is pretty cheap, just one node. We don't need real access to something really complicated. It's so easy for that. So simply go with the defaults, review and create. So next is a review page here. Azure will check the configuration in the background. We can hit create and it will start. You see the deployment, top deployment is submitted. We will see the progress here. It will take some minutes. In the early days, it took about 45 minutes. Now it's really, really fast. It's really cool. While this is deploying, let me tell you a little bit about Kubernetes. You have different options to run containers in Azure. You can do it on a virtual machine. You can do it with Azure Container Instances, which is a very cheap way. It's easier and it's more managed than a virtual machine. So you need to care less about updating stuff and so on. But it's somehow limited, especially if you have more complex deployments with multiple containers involved, with internal traffic, you need load balancers and so on. Then you will go with an orchestrator, and the orchestrator that dominates the market by far is Kubernetes, which is really cool environment. You will see it. It's command line driven. And so we will use basically a container here. It's a demo web container. It's a simple website. I have created a deployment file. We need a deployment file for Kubernetes. That's the YAML file to deploy the container. Once our setup is and running. What's our setup? So what's Azure doing here while we are waiting for there are two master nodes deployed. The master nodes are responsible for managing everything in the Kubernetes cluster. And we will have one worker node. The worker node is running essentially the workload for the Kubernetes cluster. The master nodes are managed by Microsoft, and what is really nice, you don't have to pay for the master nodes. That's really, really cool. So you can compare a Kubernetes deployment to a single VM deployment if you only have one node, which is fine for development and so on. Often, not in all cases. So that's really, really nice thing. So basically, there's a lot of stuff deployed. There are also two different resource groups deployed. One is managed by the Kubernetes clusters. For example, if you create a load balancer in Kubernetes with kubectl, which is the command line utility, essentially in the background, an Azure load balancer is created in that second resource group. So don't touch is the theme of that resource group. Yeah, it's completely managed by Azure. It's not your job to touch anything in that resource group. It's not hidden from you, but if you touch something, basically it will not work anymore really smoothly. But we can do everything in the container cluster. We can update the cluster. We can deploy additional containers. We can scale out. We can scale in. We can make rolling updates on the containers. All that will work. That is really cool. but it's standardized. So we will always use kube control commands. And this kube control commands will work on-prem if you have a Kubernetes cluster on-prem. That will work. If you have a Kubernetes cluster in the cloud, it will also work, depending on the capabilities, right? Of course. So you see our Kubernetes cluster now is deployed. We can go to that container. And you see at the moment, more or less nothing is running here. So we have the standard Kubernetes containers here, but everything else is not running at the moment. So let's check here. Let's get our Cloud Shell, and then we can check if we have access to our container. Now we have our Kubernetes cluster. You see the services and ingresses here, nothing deployed. I have prepared an Xmas file, Xmas YAML. We will deploy a very simple container called demo web, which will display a website. You see it's running on Linux on port 80, and in front we will deploy a load balancer. On port 80 again. So let's deploy that. Kube control, apply -file xmas.yaml. Let's go. We can refresh our GUI, and you see it's pending currently. We have already an internal IP. Kube control get pods shows us that this demo web is up and running. And when we refresh it here, you see we have an external address, and we can open it. Maybe it will take 1 or 2 seconds, and then usually it will work. With our website, because of a load balancer needs to come up here. So let's give it a second, or we can try again. After some time, it will be up and running here. Kube control, get services. You see there is our external address already listed. And there we go. Isn't that great? This is our website. So yeah, now Christmas can come. That's really, really cool. Thank you for watching. Thank you for deploying with me. If you want to go along, it's very simple. I showed you all steps. Deploy a container, deploy your AKS. I've explained a little bit how AKS works. And there we go. There's our container up and running. Thank you for watching. Take care. I wish you a really nice Christmas time. Enjoy. Maybe you have snow depending on where you are in the world. And if you have any questions regarding the festive tech calendar, don't hesitate and come back to me. You can contact me. You will find me on LinkedIn. Ask me any questions. I'm happy to answer. Thanks for joining and take care. Goodbye.